Hi there. I'm Chris Hartley. I was asked to help moderate our questions for this evening. I first just wanted to thank you as our audience for joining our Pollinator happy hour and a half this evening and really encourage you to make it a happy hour. And also I'd like to thank our speakers for the time that they put in both of these presentations and for the work that they've done in pollinator space, many of them for large portions of their careers. That being said, having listened to these presentations this evening, I really did see a combination of themes that really went through each of them. First, there was definitely a large presence of solar or a blend between industry and pollinator habitat, something that we haven't seen a lot in environmental markets in the past. And I think one of the reasons that I find this so exciting is it really does show us not only what the value is of ecosystem services, but really provides us an equation by which we can pay for these services. And that's really looking to business or industry, or those that benefit, with a mind at, are they paying for those services as well? And if so, how can we make that happen? Taylor's slides, which came up last, had several questions. One of which in particular was, economically, does it make sense to start reaching out to some of these folks and asking for them to help support pollinator services, or are there other ways that we should come about this? So I'd like to shoot that straight off to Taylor at this point.
Yeah, I hope you guys can hear me well. Chris, when you say these folks, who do you mean should we approach them to support pollinators?
I apologize, but I cannot hear Taylor.
Can anyone hear me?
I can hear you.
I'm going to assume that he gave us a brilliant answer because he always does. Another piece that we've continually seen throughout tonight's presentations was a real emphasis on collaboration, both between government and industry and between academia and both public and private sector, farmers and growers and whatnot. This is a question to each of you, and I'd love to hear your responses. And really, I'm curious, what do you see the role of citizen science? Are we looking beyond the classical, researcher researched, or are we really looking beyond that? Jessica, you look ready to go.
We've used citizen science in a couple of ways in our pollinator research. I think some of it as a collective pool does seem to be reinforce some information that we would otherwise get from actual field studies that can be helpful. But I would say we kind of take it a little bit with a grain of salt. Some of it is not, the species aren't identified appropriately. And some of the observations that come in are not, they're not verified as a one-by-one thing. But overall, I don't know. I mean, the group, some of the same folks that you guys have studied with too, with Eric Lonsdorf and Claire Kremen and those guys, I've asked them that question, and they have confidence in it at a broad scale. On an individual, place by place scale, I'd be careful with it a little bit, but it does incentivize, interest in the topic, right? Looking at the bees and getting your binoculars out and seeing what's there. So that part of it is really, really awesome, right? And that's good. But I do kind of struggle with that piece about, should a project get an award because of it is publicly accessible, or should it get an award because the ecosystem services have actually had an uplift? That is a struggle that we have sometimes on projects that we're looking at for awards, and the same with, kind of the same with citizen science a bit. But having the public interested, you can't go wrong with that. I mean, even if they get monarch versus viceroy wrong, who cares really, so.
Lee or Izzy, would you like to chime in?
Yeah, this is Lee. I agree. I think citizen science it will be very important, especially when we're thinking about trying to scale up results to some of the skills that we're trying to better understand and implement some of the strategies concerning, solar pollinator habitat, for example. But very much the same reasons that Jessica mentioned. There are some concerns that we have with the use of citizen science data. We at Argonne have been thinking about ways to structure research designs that specifically would employ citizen science data, and those research questions and research designs are often different than the designs that we would construct using other conventional methods. But it's a great idea and something that we've definitely been considering.
Izzy, where does the government stand?
Well, I'll just say that I think it's almost a different conversation if we're talking about managed pollinators versus non-honeybee. I don't want to say that honeybees are only managed pollinators because there's others, but the non-apis world versus apis, as we would typically refer to it. So in the honeybee world, I think that the kinks are getting worked out for citizen science. It's working pretty well. Folks are coming up with standardized methods and technologies. So much can be derived from hive scales, and that is really driving our ability to be gleaning in real time from multiple hives at once. So that's quite exciting. In the non-apis world, I've seen some great citizen science studies. I think some of the work that Sam Droege is doing over at USGS is really impressive. I've actually been a citizen scientist, just for fun on the weekends, working with him on, some of his woodland studies. And, it's really easy to set up these transects. He would never in a million years trust us with identifying bees, not even to genus, which is smart. So I think where the line has to be drawn is, yes, you can outsource some of the labor-intensive parts of these studies, but in the end, especially when you're getting into taxonomy, there's a limited number of people who can do it well. And so I think the question must be considered at the same time, not just, can citizen science help? Yes, it can, but there's also this, complementary need to increase the amount of people out there who can do correct assessments of species, especially for native monitoring. So I think you have to have both, or otherwise you're just going to have a huge backlog of bees that aren't identified.
Okay, I have about 3 minutes and one last question for each of you to answer. Looking at 2021, what are our biggest opportunities for pollinator work? Iris, what do you think?
It's a good question. Feels like so much is riding on 2021 at this point to be the year. But I think there's a lot of really exciting work that's been ongoing. There's some new projects that several of us mentioned that are up and coming that I really think are going to help advance and answer some key questions about how to do conservation work more effectively and efficiently, and really get more organizations and individuals on board with thinking innovatively about conservation. So I think there's a lot of momentum building, and maybe some things that fell behind schedule this past year, given everything that 2020 was, but I think we'll pick back up in 2021. That's my hope.
Taylor?
Yeah, what a great question. So I think the excitement is to combine the biology and the economics of this problem to really, really support decisions about land use. So several of us in the panel talked about that, but really understanding when an investment in pollinator habitat, will pay off for the farmer who's making that investment, how it'll pay off for society or not. And when, if it doesn't, being clear, or we don't think it will, in other words, the red areas on the map that I showed, when we are conserving pollinators for other reasons. We don't always have to have them have spectacular economic returns for farmers. There are lots of reasons to conserve pollinators, and we should be clear by having economists and biologists work better together when that's the case and when it's not, so that if people do jump in and do this restoration, they actually are likely to see those returns, and it doesn't become a kind of a disappointment after all the hype.
Lee?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say for us, for 2021 and beyond, a lot of work has gone into looking at the potential benefits of pollinator habitat and different strategies for developing it. I think one big question that we would like to address going forward is sort of on the implementation side of things, looking at how to coordinate with various stakeholders, regulators, industry groups, farmers to have pollinator habitat established and what that might mean in terms of cost. So looking at doing a cost assessment, how pollinator habitat might be managed at some of these sites going forward. So sort of maintenance questions, things like that, because a lot of the issues that we've discussed, especially for the solar side of things, it's pretty new, and we really haven't gone very many years into solar pollinator habitat. So I think those kinds of questions in terms of implementation, cost, and maintenance are going to be pretty critical going forward.
Jessica?
I was really glad Iris got called on first. So I'm thinking that I guess in my head, there's kind of two prongs of this. One of them is more the technical research side. And on that side, I'm thinking about the verification and metrics that are going to be used to look at these properties and sites to see that they're actually having the ecological outcome that they report that they say they do, which is very, the solar pollinator thing is a good one that's on deck with the solar pollinator scorecards and asking that question. Do they really perform in a way that, a scorecard would suggest that they do or not? And generally corporate reporting, if they're supporting pollinators, well, then show me the metrics that you're using that show what you're doing on pollinators. So that's kind of the technical side for me. And then the public education side, I think, comes pretty quickly from there. I've had a really great experience this past year, just sort of flipping out of that really deep technical metric kind of monitoring species ID space into communication and with a very broad group. And I wonder if that is where, getting that sort of viral type of, hashtag sort of thing going, is going to help. Well, it definitely will help turn the corner. So I'm kind of splitting my efforts a little bit between, even early childhood education and volunteering in the classroom with these corporate business case, right, on pollinators. And I guess I'll keep doing that in 2021.
Excellent. Well, I'd like to thank our audience once again and invite you all to join us tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Eastern, when we'll continue with our ACES 2021 preview, and then followed at 1:30 with more student fellow lightning talks. If you need more pollinators now, please reach out to our panel members. And I look forward to seeing all of you at ACES 2021 at our pollinator mixer, when hopefully we'll be doing this in person. So once again, thank you to everyone, and we'll see you next time.